Hey everyone, welcome to another video on Superman and Lois Season 3. In today's video, we'll be talking about multiple different stuff such as the Superboy setup and will Jordan actually full on become Superboy by the end of Superman and Lois Season 3. We'll be talking about the ending that we saw from episode 1 and how it all links with Lex Luthor. What is this ending exactly? What is Bruno Mannheim's grand plan? We'll be talking about all of this. We do also have a first look at Lex Luthor, who will be a villain later on in the season, and we do also have an interview to break down from showrunner Todd Helbing himself. So yesterday, from the time I'm recording this video, we got the premiere for Superman and Lois Season 3, and my god does it feel amazing to have this show back. We get amazed by some incredible and gorgeous cinematography from Tom Cavanagh, we see some incredible visual effects, and we get introduced to this brand new dark tone, which fits perfectly with the villains that we are getting in this season. And we have a couple of interesting villains that we're going to talk about as well. As I said, we will also be talking about some interview from showrunner Todd Helbing as well. Now, in this episode, we did see more of Jordan's Superboy training. Obviously, last season, he has become a bit more confident with his abilities. He's still not to the level of the likes of like Superman, for example, yet. He's still training. He's still young. And, we do see Jordan's struggles with being a superhero. Like, you do see how down he is to help. So, for example, when we had that crane incident in Malaysia, like how Jordan flew right there before Superman did and he tried to save the day. But then also how hard it is for him to resist saving people as well. Like we did have that conversation in the birthday party where Jordan is able to hear trouble. And that's obviously when Superman was facing off against Atom Man, and you do see how Jordan, he's so tempted to go out and help, but obviously he knows he's not ready. He's listening to his father finally, and he's going to stay in place. But we do see these struggles with Jordan's character, and I'm really interested to see how this develops throughout the season. We do obviously have some really cool training sequences between Superman and Superboy as well. We have more of this training sequence trying to get Jordan become more confident with his abilities, and this is something I am really liking. Will we potentially see him go out in the field eventually? That will be pretty interesting to see. Like, will we actually see Jordan wearing a full-on Superboy suit? That would be really, really cool. Obviously, in the training sequence, he does also get introduced to some combat training as well in the Fortress of Solitude, where Clark does essentially use like an AI or some sort of thing, like a Machino Man or like an Atomic Man, something like that, like just like a monstrous AI, and that's to help Jordan with his combat training. So I thought those were really good additions to his character, and obviously this is just further Superboy setup for eventually later on in the season. Now, the next part of the video, we will be talking about this interview with showrunner Todd Helbing, and he does pretty much reveal some pretty interesting details about not only Superman and Lois Season 3 in general, but also our big bads Bruno Mannheim and Lex Luthor. Now, this is coming from Krypton's site, and I don't know if they have the exclusive or like if it's someone else's interview and they shared it. I don't know about that. So, Krypton's site, they ask, for my first very broad question, what would you say is the core theme of Superman and Lois Season 3, in which we have co-showrunner Brent Fletcher answering this question? It's always family, but I would say it's also fighting against things. This time, it's the battle against uncontrollable forces. Now, the next part is linked to this as well, so I will be talking about the next question as well before I go into the breakdown. So, without spoilers, can you talk about the biggest threat that Superman and Lois face in this season? In which this time, showrunner Todd Helbing replies, I would say that there are two forces. One is the one that we set up last season, which is Bruno Mannheim, and then we won't spoil the other one. But it's funny, they both pose an equal threat in some ways, and they both affect the family with equal measure. And then co-showrunner Fletcher responds, I think every year the family is under duress and under fire from enemies, and this year I think it's the biggest threat to the family that we've ever done. The stakes are the highest we've ever done, by a lot, and the relationships get pulled apart and put back together the most that we've ever done as well. Now, these are some very, very interesting tidbits that have been revealed, and we did kind of get like a small taster of this in the season premiere. We obviously get introduced to like a much darker tone compared to the previous two seasons. So that right off the bat just shows like how dark the season is going to be. So I am really liking that tone, by the way. Like a dark tone for a Superman show is quite different, and I'm really looking forward to see where that goes. But also battle against uncontrollable forces. We know Bruno Mannheim from the ending of the episode is planning something. Obviously, he is forming Intergang. He has Onomatopoeia on his side as well. Whether he has other like powerful forces with him as well, that will be very, very interesting. But we saw how powerful Bruno Mannheim and the others are at the moment, and that is exemplified in the season premiere when Superman was facing off against Ataman, who's clearly been leveled up. Like, he's got powers of that, like a Kryptonian, for example. And then in Ataman's assassination, we've seen him get assassinated, but no bullets have been inserted whatsoever. And we find out that obviously Onomatopoeia was the one behind this. But then towards the end of the episode, we see that this has been what Bruno Mannheim was trying to do. And he uses his doctor to inject something onto Ataman, brings him back to life, and says something along the lines of, "We are getting closer to what we're trying to accomplish." Something along the lines of that. But this is very interesting, and obviously we do see the heartbeats coming back, so we know Ataman does come back to life. So in regards to what he's trying to do over here, it seems like, in simple words, create an unstoppable force that's going to, pose a big threat against Superman. Because right now, just a normal mafia guy like Bruno Mannheim, for example, he would easily get tossed around against the likes of Superman. He's going to need someone very, very powerful by his side. Intergang is not enough. Onomatopoeia is not enough. He's going to need someone that could pose the same strength, if you will. So I think what he's trying to do is he's trying to create a dosage of maybe X-kryptonite or some sort of kryptonite energy that temporarily or just permanently gives Kryptonian abilities, but to a much stronger level, if you will, and that they're immortal as well, so they can't necessarily die. Maybe something like that as well. But that will be very, very interesting. Now, what I am most interested to see in particular is the role of Bruno Mannheim and whether he will be linked with Lex Luthor, or are they two separate villains? Are we going to get something, for example, like Arrow Season 2, where in the first half we had Sebastian Blood and him pretty much distributing the Mirakuru serums across Star City, and then it's revealed later on that Sebastian Blood's boss is Deathstroke. I am expecting something like that happening, where Bruno Mannheim, yes, he's the one behind it all. Yes, he is pretty much running Intergang. He's creating these unstoppable forces and doing these experiments, but he's doing it for Lex Luthor, and in which, as we already know, Lex Luthor is one of Superman's biggest rivals, and he is going to be one of the main villains for this season as well. So I could potentially see a link like that, where the first half of the season is going to be Bruno Mannheim as the villain, and in the next half we're going to be getting Lex Luthor. That would be very, very cool. In which, speaking of Lex Luthor, we have this first look at Lex Luthor as well. Once again, another bearded Lex Luthor, so the bearded trend is going as well. But I am really interested to see how this actor portrays the role of Lex Luthor. Obviously, we've had a lot of iterations of Lex Luthor in the past couple of years, so I am really interested to see how this one stands out in particular. Obviously, it's going to be much darker as seen by the tone, so I am really interested to see how all of that fits in. But then the next question is, there's a scene in the trailer with the Daily Planet globe crashing towards Lois. Can you talk about what your reaction was when you saw that finished scene with the finished visual effects? And Todd Helbing replies, "It was awesome. We are very fortunate to have some phenomenal VFX artists that love Superman on the show, with Matt Gore and our visual effects team. We have an in-house team, but all the visual effects houses that we use are phenomenal. Everyone's just fully on board with making this the best show that it can be in the visual effects regard. So yeah, we are really thrilled. It's really cool. And what's been online is just a small piece of it. When you see the final piece, it's pretty remarkable." In which co-showrunner Fletcher responds, "In general, I think we've pushed ourselves VFX-wise further than we have in the first two seasons, and it's because of the trust we have in this team. And the fact that not only do they understand spectacle visually, but they understand the story underpinnings of it. There's a real language that we share with them, and we see it when we watch it." And obviously we can see right off the bat from just the first episode as well how incredibly like leveled up, shall we say, the VFX team have been. Like the VFX in episode 1 have been absolutely insane, just absolutely stunning, just miles above anything we've seen in the likes of like the CW shows, for example. And we do really get this nice taster of it. Now the next question is, Lois and Clark are now working with Chrissy at the Gazette. Can you talk about the new dynamic, especially now that Chrissy knows? Now, we did kind of see this happen in the first episode as it's already out. This interview was prior to Superman and Lois episode 1, but I'll still read out what they say regardless, because there's some pretty interesting things regardless on the way. So Fletcher responds, one thing that Chrissy finds out pretty quickly is that when you work with the greatest superhero ever, it comes with some being absentee. So it's going to take a little bit of time for her to get used to that dynamic. And you know, 3 sometimes it is not the best number. 3 different opinions, but they get through that pretty quickly. And as the season progresses, they make a really fantastic team. So obviously we've barely seen that yet. We've only seen Clark and Chrissy like briefly interact together in the Gazette, and no doubt obviously we're going to see more, and I'm really interested to see that dynamic. With Morgan Edge no longer being a thing, is the Daily Planet still being published? In which Helbing responds, you'll see some employees, there are some Easter egg drops of indifferent employees that you may or may not see in the future, in which Fletcher responds to that, we're in Metropolis more than usual this season, so it shows up as backdrop more than once throughout the season. They do also talk about Jonathan Kent, the new Jonathan Kent, and Michael Bishop stepping into the role. And Todd Helbing responds, this guy stepped into a very difficult situation. We have a show up and running for 2 seasons. He's taking over a beloved role, a big role, and he did effortlessly. He's a tremendous actor, an amazing person, and we love having him. I think we wanted to kind of let him do his own thing. We gave him what our interpretation was of the character, and then just let him go for it. I think everybody's going to fall in love with him as much as we have, in which obviously we've seen the first taster of what Michael Bishop does bring to the table as Jonathan Kent. Literally feels the exact same. So this actor, he's really just adapted to this role so well in my opinion, and you know, he does actually look like Jordan as well, so that's a big W in terms of like looking like twins, if you will. And can you talk about Bruno Mannheim and what separates him from other villains we may have seen before on the show? And Fletcher responds, I think he's got a philosophy that a lot of people can relate to. He kind of grew up forgotten in a forgotten part of the city, and his family has been forgotten, and he ended up taking the reins to build something for himself and to build something for his city. He's got a code. It's not always being morally correct, but you can understand emotionally, and he does do things from the heart. He's an antagonist for us, but he's also a man that can understand where his heart is, and it makes him more complicated as somebody in a weird way that you root for as an antagonist, which sometimes makes the most interesting villains. Chad Coleman's performance is off the charts. We are so lucky to have him, and what he brought to the initial idea is just incredible. So yeah, that is something I am really looking forward to. Obviously, we did get the smallest taster of Bruno Mannheim as well from the ending, and I'm really looking forward to see what else he does bring to the table, because he does genuinely seem like a really good villain. But lastly, how will the relationship between Jordan and Sarah change this year? In which Fletcher responds, that's a great question. I think you have 2 kids that have an emotional connection that are now trying out the concept of being friends. That's always hard when one person maybe has stronger feelings than the other, and balancing that and staying true to the concept of being friends, when maybe the tug of the heart is still pulling on one of them, and the challenges that you face when that happens. And obviously we do see more of a taster in the first episode in regards to that as well, and I'm really interested to see where this relationship dynamic, you know, further develops throughout the season. Are we going to see them back together, or are they just going to remain friends and just go their own ways? I'm really interested to see how all of that goes as well. But yeah guys, this is pretty much it for this video. So if you guys have enjoyed the video, please give a like and subscribe. Be sure to let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think about all of this as well. I'm interested to see all of your thoughts towards all of this, and yeah, I'll see you guys in my next video.